I'm very excited for today's guide for a number of reasons. For starters, a side note, I do play on PC, and all gameplay on the channel has been with controller, but all this gameplay is with M&K, and I do plan to play on M&K more in the future. I just don't play it that often. And I do have a little bit of an introduction for Namor, because Namor is a very important hero. If you're looking for a new hero to learn, or importantly, need a solid second or third DPS to know, this guide's for you. Because just like Wolverine, I feel that Namor should be a hero that you know, that you can bring out, because as I went over with Wolverine, up to bans, Wolverine can just climb easily. A good Wolverine is a problem in a lobby. As you get higher up, Wolverine starts to get banned, and some other heroes come out. The infamous Lord Spider-Man, Storm, Venom, Black Panther. Namor is one of the best heroes at shutting them down. At the very least, give them a very hard time. And there's just no better feeling. Really. And when going against great dive players, you're not going to shut them down completely all the time, but you will slow them down. As a matter of fact, back when I got my Grandmaster playing solo, I went low-key, and my team and I were talking about team comp. We decided to ban Namor. Why ban Namor? Because we had a Spider-Man Venom, and we won. I got my Grandmaster, happily ever after, but that's how much Namor can affect the field. They had no answer to the dive. They did very poorly against it. But note here, one of your main reasons for learning Namor is to shut it down, or to have this counter pick. Because if you get into a match, worst case scenario, a competitive game, and there's a Black Panther, a Spider-Man just destroying your team, your back line, someone needs to go Namor. Or similar, there needs to be a counter pick, and that someone needs to be you. That's the main reason to learn him, to have this useful tool in your back pocket to bring out. But the best part, he's flat out great, period. He just has built-in anti-dive, but even against just a regular team, no matter what, he's just a great hero. And today, I'm going to show you where his power is. Simple abilities, he only has 4 of them with the team up, but there's some depth here and an order of operations. First, his primary attack, Trident of Neptune. It's your left click, controller its right trigger. Throw the trident forward, reducing Aquatic Dominion's cooldown upon enemy impact. Critical hits cause monstro spawn to enter a berserk state, getting increased attack speed. You have infinite ammo, you can just hold down the trigger if you want, but a couple important things about his primary attack off the rip. It's got a small arc to it, so past about 25-ish meters, you need to aim a little bit more slightly up. I mean, even if you're at 25 meters and in, you want to aim slightly higher because the hitbox is fairly large. So always be aiming a tad high, and the further you are away, a little bit higher you're going to be aiming. His primary attack is massive damage. All things considered, infinite ammo, it deals 70 to the body, but it can crit. The crit is 100% damage increase from the base body shot, meaning it's 2 times damage. So a headshot with your primary trident deals 140 damage, just a heavy shot. And the shot, your primary trident, has no fall off, not the body shot or the headshot. So as long as you can hit them, you're going to do max damage. 140 no matter the distance to the head, hit him in the body, 70 damage. It travels at 120 meters a second, which is the same travel speed as Moon Knight's basic attack, as Groot's basic attack, and there's a 1.09 second delay between each throw. And when you get hits, you also get that Aquatic Dominion charge, more on that later. The 70 damage is nice poke damage, but the 140s, that is serious damage. You can 2-tap a lot of the heroes. It's 280 total damage. And here's a couple times versus another Namor. One up close and the other mid to far away. It's a very fast TTK, just sits them right down. Brutal damage, so anytime you get a headshot, it's valuable. And this is just the primary attack. He also has little monsters that go with that and a little bit more. We'll talk about all that in a moment. And even higher health DPS, it works out perfectly, like 350 from Mr. Fantastic. 140 headshot, 140 headshot, he's left with 70 health. That's perfect because his body shot does 70 damage. You can chunk down tanks with headshots. It's really good. And before we start getting into the monsters and the flow of his kit, I do want to talk about Blessing of the Deep. Summon a protective barrier while flying upwards. It's got a cooldown of 15 seconds. When you use it, it lasts for 3 seconds, and you can go vertically 7 meters. You can hold space on controller, your bumper and trigger, you can move up and down. It counters like every ult in the game. Magneto, Psylocke, Jeff coming to eat you, and more on that later. Hela, Moon Knight, just pop it, get out of the way. I think it's one of the best abilities in the game. Pound for pound, all things considered. On a 15-second cooldown, you can use it to float up, get back to your team, and your strategists see you easily, because you're just a huge ball in the air, they can heal you. It's also good for movement, to get high ground for your kit. It's great, and you need to remember to use it when the time's applicable. Next, the Aquatic Dominion. What Namor's known for, where things get real, there are combos to do. Summon a monster spawn that can autonomously attack enemies. They're turrets, AI turrets. And to simplify them, how they act and interact, you have 2 charges, only 2 can be on the ground at one time. If you throw a third, 1 will despawn. When you throw it out, wherever they are, on the ceiling, on the floor, they last for 8 seconds. They have 100 health, and at base, they deal 17 damage, 2 rounds a second. That's the speed of them. So for the entire duration, they shoot 14 shots. 238 total damage, and that's just one of them. If you have two of them on the ground across those 8 seconds, they deal 476 combined. They have a max range of 40 meters, but they deal their max damage 20 meters and in. So from 20 to 40, they do have damage fall off. The damage is decreased to 30% at 40 meters. So where you want them to be is 20 meters and in for full damage. When you get a critical with your primary, they go into an enhanced berserk mode for 2 seconds. In those 2 seconds, they shoot 6 shots very fast, but at 11 damage. So it's a very quick 66 damage. And again, you have 2 of them on the ground, 2 of them can be dealing 66 damage. But here's how they work. After you throw them out, they go for the closest target to them. They start dealing damage. But the moment that you hit an enemy, they're going to start focusing on that enemy. They're going to follow that target around. They're going to track that target around. If you hit the head, if you get a critical with your primary, they go into Berserker. They do their Berserker shots for 2 seconds. But once you've hit them, they're going to track the enemy you hit unless one of 3 things happens. 1, the enemy breaks line of sight, like right here. It's on the ground, it goes for the closest one. I hit the bigger one, it's up top, the monster starts to target it. But the moment that it goes around the corner, it loses line of sight. As soon as that happens, the monster loses interest. It goes back to the closest target. 2, you hit another enemy. It's going to focus the new one instead. Whichever one that you've hit, it's going to stay on until the 3rd thing. The enemy is down. Once the enemy is down, it goes back to the enemy that is closest to them. When you hit a different one, it'll start focusing them again. Once they're down, they go back to closest target. Little loop. It is constant chip damage, and that's why it's so good against dive. They go for the enemies closest to them, and if they're by you, the diver is by you, meaning the diver is going to get hit by them. 2 of them if you have them out. But here's the deal with the cooldown. They have an 8-second duration after you throw them, but the default recharge rate is 0.83 a second, which means the full recharge for one of them is going to take about 12 seconds to get it back. But as you get hits with your primary, crits or body shots, it's the same. You get a 0.84 charge per hit, and that equals to pretty much every hit shaves off a second. 1 hit within the 12 seconds, it'll come back in 11. If you get 2 hits in the 12 seconds, it's going to come back in 10, and so on. If you hit every single shot without fail, just hold the button down. It comes back in about half the time, 6 seconds. And say you don't have any monsters, as you get hits, this is working. As long as you land hits, you shave off about a second. Next, we have the team up with Luna, one of the most powerful team ups in the game, the Frozen Spawn. It's got a 20-second cooldown. It's a true cooldown. The hits don't bring it back faster. It lasts for 10 seconds. What's nice about it, it's a 3rd spawn, so you can kind of alternate. Frozen spawn regular. Once one of them goes down, throw another regular one, and by the time you just alternate it back out with the frozen one again. This one has double the health, 200. It does more damage. It does 27 instead of 17. It's got the same range rules, does its most damage 20 meters and in, 40 meter max distance. In the 10 seconds, it can dish out 17 shots, 27 apiece for guys. 459 damage over 10 seconds over that lifespan. And if you combine that with a regular spawn, both of them together, that's 697 damage. Just the turrets, nothing from you yet. With the ice spawn, if you get a crit, it does 6 fast shots of 18 damage, which its fast mode, its berserk mode, is 1 more damage than the base turret, and it does it fast, 108 very fast damage. So, more health, more damage, they last longer. But with each hit, it slows the enemy by 30% for 1 second. And it's a turret, it's going to hit them over and over. Like, look at Luna Snow. When you move forward, she skates. As soon as she gets hit by the frozen one, she can't skate. It takes her out of skate. Like, look at this Thor that was trying to rush me down. Slowed by 30%. Never made it to me. And he was slowed so much, he tried to get out of it. He tried to ult and wasted his ult. It's very powerful. A true menace to dive players. Spider-Man, Black Panther. Not only are they getting hit by these turrets, but they're slowed by 30%. And they're getting absolutely focused by these turrets. Maybe you have 2 of them. But again, if there's no dive, doesn't matter. The ice one is very, very strong. His last ability, before his ult, is Wrath of the Seven Seas. Launch the Trident forward to damage nearby enemies. Then direct all monsters spawn to perform an enhanced attack on the nearest hit enemy. When the Trident hits an enemy, monster spawn enters a berserk state, gaining access to increased speed. It's a 6-second cooldown, and you will be spamming this. Spamming it off of cooldown. This is the Super Trident. That's what we're going to call it. We have the primary Trident, your left click, and now the Super Trident, your right click. And on controller is left trigger for the Super Trident. It's got a direct impact damage and a spell field damage. Both are important. The direct impact is 40, the spell damage is 60. It cannot crit. Now the spell field, while it does 60, it splashes, so you can hit the ground. But the further you are away, it's got a 50% reduced damage at 3 meters. This has a place, but not now. More on that in a second. 90% of the time, you want to direct impact enemies. And I don't know what it is about this attack, but it feels like a cannonball, like you're throwing cinder blocks. It's got a massive hitbox. But here's the deal. You want to direct impact them. When you hit them, it can't crit. So just hit them, period. It's 100 damage. 100 damage shot every 6 seconds. Massive damage. We'll talk about it more in a second. But what this does, its main function, when you hit an enemy with this, your monster spawns deal a huge chunk shot, then go into berserker mode for 2 seconds, like they did with a crit. So you hit them with the super trident, they now focus that target, they do the chunk shot, which is 60 damage. Then they follow up with their fast 66 damage from their berserker fast shots. So 11 damage 6 times after all that. Just the super trident, with one spawn, it's a total of 226 damage. That's 100 from the trident, 60 from the chunk shot, and then the berserker shots. If you have 2 spawns, both are going to hit for 60, both are going to do the berserker mode for a total of 352 damage. And we're not even throwing in the ice spawn. The ice spawn, when you land the super trident, it deals 60 damage as well, but its berserker damage is that 18 6 times. It's just better. All your damage goes way up, and there are combos to know. There's an order of operations. But before we get into that, his last ability, his ultimate, Born of Proteus. Summon Giganto to leap atop enemies within range, disabling their mobility abilities. It's got a cast distance of 30 meters. It has 2 damage profiles. In the very center circle, it deals 500 damage. The outer circle, it deals 200. If they get hit by it and don't go down, they're knocked on the ground for a second and a half. And the special effect is that while Giganto is getting ready to drop, all movement abilities are disabled. So Moon Knight's jump, Psylocke's dash, Captain America's dash. No movement to get out. So if they're in the center, they're at least going to get hit by the outer edge as they're trying to get out. Even in ultimates like Mantis, Invisible Woman, Cloak and Dagger, while they're in their ult, if you hit them with the 500 damage in the direct center, it's going to down them. Invisible Woman, if you focus her out within her spell field, it'll take her out, then put down the force field. It can't take out Luna. And when you talk about its use cases, it's kind of like Moon Knight. Got kind of the same activation, but anything in the center gets hit really hard, and outside is that 200 damage. They're at least stunned at that point. So it is a good idea to have out your spawn beforehand. That way, as they're on the ground, they're going to get focus tagged, especially if you hit them with the super trident or just hit them with a regular primary. It's also great to throw on yourself too. I do this all the time. Say you're fighting on a payload, everyone's kind of fighting, just ult the payload. You might get some downs for something that was in the middle, but everything around you is going to be knocked on the floor. That's going to help you and your team. Or even better, like right here, a Jeff ulted me. You could time this to where the moment Jeff pops up after taking you, Giganto's going to land on him. Kind of funny. A fish thinks that they can take Namor away, LMAO. But the ult is good. I like the ult. If it does it down, it'll stun. And the field itself does make them immobile. They can't dash out, and it's great to pair with Groot, Jeff, anything that gets them tied into a spot. So let's now bring it all together. Things to do, to look out for, bread and butter combos, his playstyle, the monster positions, what makes him so strong, and more. First, if you're ever in the situation, up close, just like most heroes, Namor does have an actual melee. He does 2 swipes and like a thrust forward with the trident. If you're in melee range, alternate your primary and melee and cancel the in-between. It's just like Groot and Magic. Primary melee, primary melee. You're not going to be searching for this. This is going to be brought to you by a Spider-Man, a Venom, a Magic. They're going to want to get close to you. You can do this back. You aren't trying to run people down with Namor. This is for when they get on you. Primary melee, primary melee. Next, another animation cancel. Very easy, but something you want to get down, because after this, we're going to build on it, and you're going to use it in your arsenal. Primary trident, super trident. Left click, right click. Easy enough. And on controllers, right trigger, left trigger. And what this is, that super trident's on a 6-second cooldown. You can throw it a ton. But this combo, even if it's a body shot and then land the super trident, it's 170 damage. But the goal is a headshot with your primary, then land the super trident. 240 damage. And I'm telling you, not too many heroes can apply 240 damage this quick as a 1-2 punch scenario. But with Namor, it has 0 damage fall off. Left click, immediately right click. As soon as that first trident's thrown, right click. It goes back to back. It's going to be up to you if you land the crit or not. If not, 170 damage is no joke. A huge part of your arsenal, because that's not the full story. This little 1-2 punch, every 6 seconds you can do this, spam it. But the actual bread and butter all the time, along with this, nearly every engagement is you're going to have a spawn on the ground. That makes things a lot better and a lot easier. You need a spawn out, 2 of them if you can. If you have the ice spawn, it's just kind of over. If you want something gone, if you want something deleted, there's 2 ways to go about this. With the spawn out, just right click them. It's the super trident, the spawn goes into berserk state. Just this is 100 from the trident, 60 from the monster, and then we have the berserker attacks that tracks them. It could be a support, a Luna, and a Morlock. It could be a DPS, you want them gone. Make sure you have a spawn on the field, direct impact with the super trident, work on primary shots. It is fast, big damage. But ideally, you're going to do the 1-2 combo. You have a spawn on the ground, primary super trident. This is 140, 160 for 300 damage. Then the spawn deals its fast quick damage, its berserker state, and it keeps going. One is super trident important targets. And hey, you know what? That could even be a tank. It does a lot of damage to tanks, like Thor. It is quick, fast, insane pressure. And I'm going to get into monster placement in a moment, but you're going to have these spawns out all the time. You're going to be landing primary hits whenever you can. And what's nice about Namor is you can jump a lot because of his cadence. He has that little delay between throws. You can be really accurate while just jumping around. Throw the spawn whenever you can. Your priority target, you're going to left click, right click, or just to make sure you hit them, line it up and hit them with the super trident. That way your spawns could do the big chunk damage and start focusing them. We're about to see a lot of Storm and Human Torch. Namor is great against flying heroes. Same deal, because you have your spawn out. The moment that you hit them with the super trident, they get focused. Find them, make sure you land that, they get focused hard. Massive damage. And I didn't talk about it in the section, that's because I needed to talk about it right now. With that super trident, it does splash damage because it has a spell field. Wherever this splashes, the monsters will shoot that chunk shot there, the big 60 shot, even if nothing's there. You need to be focused on landing direct impacts on enemies, because again, 100 damage is no joke, and you get the focus down from the monsters. Extreme pressure from the monsters. Except for one case. That's for when you're being doe. Say a support is, say you are, and most of the time your spawn going to be around you. That is why it does splash, because if they're moving around very, very fast and it has that big splash radius, meaning you can splash the feet, hit a wall, it can splash them. If something's diving and they're very quick around you, you can throw this on the ground at the feet, at least try to splash them. And when you do, that counts as a hit. That means those chunk shots, those little AI turrets, start directing all of it to the dive. So use that splash for enemies that are diving you, because what you're essentially doing is tagging them for your monsters. Otherwise, it's direct impacts. It's too important. Those focused monsters deal a ton of damage. So where do you place the monsters? What's the cadence? And I do feel that there is actually no wrong way to loop them out. Like if it's a team battle, having two is great. If you need to use both resources, do it. As long as you're landing primary shots, you're going to get them back pretty fast. I will say though, it is nice, just like Loki, to have one on cooldown because, as I went over, whenever you need it, it's there. Throw it on the ground, right click your main target, it is massive damage. It's there when you need it. And a lot of people say to put them high, and I do agree with that for the most part to an extent. There's some things you need to consider though. When it comes to your placement, if you're wondering what's the best place to put them down, there's only two things that matter. One, line of sight. Two, safety. As I stated earlier, if an enemy breaks the line of sight, they lose interest. They stop being focused, they go back to the nearest target. So make sure whatever you're fighting, whatever you're intending to fight, whatever the layout is in the choke point, make sure the monster can see everything that you see and want to get damage on. So that's number one priority. Doesn't matter where they are. The second is safety. Like, yeah, putting them up high is great, but if that place is just in the middle of nowhere and it's close to them, it's going to get taken out easily, meaning you lose a ton of your overall damage. So make sure they're in a place that is as safe as they can be. But what I need you to realize, a big note here, I don't see it talked about too much. One of the safest places and best places is on the ground or right next to you in the midline or your backline. That does a number of things. One, it helps the inherent part of his kit. It protects you and your supports from being dove. But if the area permits it, say it's an open space, one of the best spots is right on the ground, right next to you, because the monsters shoot through your allies. Meaning, if you have a front line of Groot and Magneto, everyone's kind of dueling it out, you're in that mid to back line, your spawns are on the ground with you. For the enemy to take them out, they have to shoot around your tanks, around your allies to find them, focus them down, and take them out. Meanwhile, the spawns are just shooting through your tank. So actually on the ground, using your tanks as a shield for them is one of the safest areas for them. And no matter what, it can see them through your allies. It doesn't, quote, break line of sight. And there's going to be times where you place them high on the left column and right column. But when they stick out like that, they do get focused. And even though they got taken out, we have to remember is that they're getting hit by them. They had to take focus away from your front line to aim at them and take them out. They have 100 health. It's not a total loss when they do that because it does help your team. But all that matters is line of sight and safety. Period. It's a place where they can see what they need to see and a place that's the safest available. They only last 8 seconds on the ground, so it all happens in spurts. There are times you're going to be backline, midline, up high. Like a little height is great, but honestly, on the ground is my personal favorite, like I was talking about, because you have the safety of your front line protecting your spawn, and you're within that 20 meters. You're also helping out with your back line. And I do mix in high ground when the situation comes up. It's all map dependent. It's all control point dependent. But remember, your real damage comes 20 meters in, and your role is to help with dive and to do big chunk damage. Midline is perfect, and as I talked about, when you want something gone, your spawns are going to be down, right-click them, direct impact, and focus them. Huge damage. Your last line of defense is your shield. You're going to go up in the air, your midline, so your backline supports are going to see you, hopefully you get healed. Everyone kind of come together with the help of your monsters to take out the diver. You're kind of an overseer. You're protecting a couple things. You're going to place turrets in areas where you and them can put in the most work possible. There's actually a lot of depth to Namor. I mean, a ton. He deals massive damage very quickly. So practice his order of operations with his cooldowns, practice his bread and butter combos, left click, right click very quickly. Make sure you have a spawn on them, and whatever you want down, right click them, or super trident them. It'll be left trigger on controller. Namor's going to be one of your strongest heroes if you put in the time, guaranteed. And that's regardless if they have dive on their team or not. And if they do, you have the perfect answer. If you're new here, remember to hit the subscribe button. And if you are subscribed, thank you so much for your support. Let's talk about Namor down below. As always, share your tips. Gather as much information as you can from this video, articles, other videos. Be the best player that you can be. Let's talk about it. Thank you for watching, and until the next one, I am CoolGuy.